J.D. Vance is right that Europe's values are no longer the same as America's. Vice President J.D. Vance's speech February 14 at the Munich Security Conference was not merely the most important speech the precocious young second-in-command has delivered in his political career. It was also a speech that encapsulates the entire geopolitical era, that of a return to prudence, sobriety, and nationalism as the hallmarks of American foreign affairs. And this departure from post-Berlin Wall universalist liberalism has been a long time in the making, and Vance's incisive rebuke of European elites powerfully drove home the point. For the foreseeable future, U.S.-European relations will not be the same, and that's a good thing. Vance took a blowtorch to delicate European elite sensitivities. He excoriated, among other things, Europe's unfortunate recent turn towards censorship of perceived dissident speech and mass immigration from nations such as Syria and Afghanistan. The diplomats assembled in Munich were expectedly aghast. One German official broke down in tears from the lectern. And in truth, Vance was giving voice to the many Europeans who have been sending their clear signs by voting for nationalist, populist, anti-immigration parties everywhere from Britain to the old Iron Curtain. But more than speaking for those Europeans, Vance was speaking as an American, as a young American nationalist statesman in particular. And it's here that we see how U.S.-Europe relations could be reset for a decade or more. For the previous generation of American leaders, the notion of going into the belly of the European Union, delivering such a stern rebuke to high-ranking European leaders, would have been unthinkable. For Americans who came of political age during the Cold War, it was simply expected that the United States and Western Europe, specifically, would long be allied in lockstep fashion. After all, in contrast to the Soviet Union and other communist nations, we shared the same values. Vance's speech underscored the growing chasm between America and European values. The United States prizes free speech. Europeans increasingly do not. The United States, especially since January 20th, once again prizes sovereignty and nationhood. European elites increasingly do not. But the broader Trump-Vance America First critique of Europe goes far beyond the growing values chasm. There's also a massive national interest chasm. Unless and until Europe comes to appreciate that MAGA-style foreign policy realism places the pursuit of the American national interest above everything else, U.S.-Europe relations will continue to be strained. The Trump foreign policy doctrine, which goes back to his first term and for which Vance has emerged as an articulate spokesman, is predicated on a sober assessment of the 21st century geopolitical map. We once again live, as we did during the Cold War, in a multipolar world. This time the power to focus on is communist China. Accordingly, America's overwhelming imperative is to devote our limited resources, at least those deployed outside our own hemisphere, to containing and repelling China. But America does, of course, have other interests in the world. We're threatened by radical Islamism, and we do depend on the freedom of navigation on the seas just as much as any power. The relevant question for structuring American foreign relations is this: how can we best empower and embolden proficient, generally self-sufficient allies to patrol and safeguard their own regions of the world in a way that redounds to the mutual tangible interests of both our regional allies and the United States itself? The Abraham Accords peace deals brokered during the final year of Trump's first term demonstrates how this can work in practice, a quintessential act of foreign policy realism statecraft. The accords brought together Israel, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan in a strategic Iran containment alliance. Saudi Arabia, though formally on the sidelines, supports the accords. Iran and its myriad proxy militias present a continued threat to the United States, as we tragically learned at Tower 22 in Jordan last January. The best bang for your buck, American national interest securing path to containing the mullahs is to embolden the like-minded allies to tend to the problems in their parts of the world. There could, in theory, be a similar situation in Europe. The United States, after all, is threatened by Russia, albeit not nearly as much as is Europe. But European allies, the elites, too often try to have it both ways with Russia. They are hopelessly addicted to Russian energy, and Germany, above all, was the leading a proponent of Vladimir Putin-empowered Nord Stream 2 natural gas pipeline. Despite their addiction to Russian energy, they ironically claim to be deathly afraid of Putin's territorial ambitions. While EU energy purchases power Putin's war machine, many of Europe's NATO members still do not meet their defense spending treaty obligations. There is a genuine national interest gulf between the United States and Europe on the pressing question of Russia, including the settlement of the war in Ukraine. If Europeans are so gravely concerned about the precise nature of the redrawn Donbass border in eastern Ukraine, for instance, they can invest more of their own military and diplomatic resources to pursue that settlement themselves. But Europe should not stand in the way of the US-led resolution to the war in Ukraine. The post-Berlin Wall unipolar moment is long over. Nationalism and realism are not merely the flavors of the day, they are the flavors of the century. It would behoove Europe to get with the program. J.D. Vance is right. And this is by John Hammer on Los Angeles Times by DNYUZ. There are many European politicians that claim that they would go down in history as being huge idiots if they don't follow Trump's course of action concerning the peace deal between Ukraine and Russia. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Please support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.